Call the meeting to order at 7:32 p.m. And with that, I will do the roll call. So Nathan, I'm sorry, Niraj Mathur. Did I say that right? Not here at this point. Steve Smith.
He just got in, so I think there he is.
Yeah, sorry, I got that thing where I was the attendee and not a panelist again. Had to
Okay,
go back in. Sorry about that. Here.
good. Andre Testman.
Here.
Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Daryl Lambert.
Here.
Welcome. Chris Elef. Let's see. David Goodman. Here. I see you, David. I didn't hear you. Can you do
Here, can you hear me now?
Okay. Yeah, I hear you very faint. You low on microphone there. And then I see we also have Council Member Kara Christensen.
I am here. Did you want me to say hello?
Yeah, I just was noting that you were here.
Hello.
And then we have 7 attendees, as well as Ethan, Council Member Ethan Benson as an attendee as well. Okay.
So, excuse me for a moment. Commissioner Mathur, I've sent you at least one request to join. Oh, looks like you did it. Okay. Give him a second to join in.
Okay.
There he goes.
Hey guys, this is Neeraj Mathur. I'm so sorry. I got booted off Zoom.
Oh, okay. Niraj Mathur, how do you say your last name?
It's Neeraj Mathur, M-A-T-H-U-R. It's like M-O almost, yeah.
Welcome.
Thanks.
So next part, looking for approval. Actually, before I do that, let me just give a quick moment for introduction of our new members. I'm Luke Murzak, the vice chair, and we'll do a vote in a few moments for a new chair and vice chair. But let's go position 1. Niraj, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself in about 30 seconds, and we'll go around for the new members.
Sure. Neeraj Mathur. I'm an executive with a company called Boomi, which is part of Dell. I came from Salesforce, been in the Valley, Snoqualmie area since 2006. Do a lot of work with philanthropies in the area, support survivors of domestic violence, and I'm really active in the Indian community here.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you.
And then Andre.
Good evening, everyone. Andre Testman. I'm probably one of the newest people to Snoqualmie. My family and I moved in August of 20 when I separated from the Marine Corps. I was a 53 pilot in the Marine Corps, and now I work for Amazon in the Amazon Air side. So I run their safety programs. But yeah, originally from San Diego, and now I discovered the paradise that is Snoqualmie.
Excellent.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And then, well, our returning folks, Steve, if you could give a 60-second introduction to yourself, long-term planning commissioner.
Yeah, Steve Smith. I've been living here in Snoqualmie for about 15 years, and I've been on the Planning Commission for 11, I believe. So I'm the old timer if you have questions of things that happened in the past. I have lots of war stories. And outside of this, I work in public relations for high-tech firms throughout the US.
Excellent. And Daryl?
I'm still mastering the mute button. Daryl Lambert, I've been in Snoqualmie for about 4 years. Joined the commission about, I think, last year. Yeah, I've been here about a year. And I work with Seattle City Light as safety. And yeah, obviously Seattle.
Excellent. And David?
Hi, welcome new folks. My name is David Goodman. I've lived in Snoqualmie for about 3 years here with my wife and my 20-month-old daughter. I joined the Planning Commission pretty soon after I moved here, and during the day, I work on fare and pricing policy for King County Metro Transit.
Excellent, excellent.
And I'm also from San Diego, by the way, Andre.
Oh, wow. Great. So since we do have a full docket, we might have some further background, but I do want to press on. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
That was Commissioner Smith. Can I get a second?
A second.
That was Commissioner Tessman. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. And now I'd like to open this for citizen comments for items that are not on the agenda. Look at the participant. I see no raised hands. Okay, so we will move on to agenda item number 5, election of the chair and vice chair. We are very fortunate for 2 years to have now council member Johnson be our chair, and I've been the vice chair for the past year, but it was very good. And now that he's the council member, we've got to elect a new chair and vice chair. So open for nominations.
Can we get a description of the role of both?
Can I ask Jason to help us out with that?
Sure, no problem. Generally speaking, the chair's duties would be to, as you've seen, run the meetings. And there are some minor administrative tasks, which is to say they work with the community development department staff on the agenda. So it's both setting the agenda and helping when we have full agendas to help determine what we're going to push off to another meeting or things like that. And then, of course, when the commission makes decisions, whether it's on permits or recommendations to the city council, usually it's the chair who signs the reports or decisions or whatever document it is that shows what the planning commission's recommendation is. So you'd be signing on behalf of the planning commission, not necessarily as an individual planning commissioner at that point. So that's the brief version of it. The vice chair would be there to step in when the chair is unavailable. Now, Councilmember Johnson was very rarely unavailable, so I don't think the Vice Chair Marusiak had too much to do. So certainly Vice Chair is probably not a position that requires much, if any, commitment. The chair commitment requires at least a willingness to, like I said, run the meeting and then a little bit of coordination with staff.
And how long is the term?
For 1 year.
1 year.
You can, of course, resign from the chairmanship if you need to. We would deal with that. We understand people have other things going on in their lives, or your situation changes. But we ask for at least the year, and then we can hold new elections in the following year.
I'd make a motion to nominate Vice Chair Marusiak for chair, if he is willing to serve.
I'm willing.
You don't need to make a motion with a second. You can just nominate, and then the nominee can accept or decline the nomination, if that makes it a little easier.
Any other nominations? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Honored.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, so let the record reflect that Luke Marusiak is now the chair of the Planning Commission. Then I'll nominate Steve Smith as the vice chair, if he's willing.
I'd love, I mean, we've got so many, fresh faces and those that have been around for a year or two now. I think it'd be great for others to get the experience. I think I served 3 years as chair and 2.5 or so as vice chair in the past. So I'd, love to get some, if if needed, happy to do so, but I think it'd be a great opportunity for others to get engaged in the pipeline for potential future chair also.
Does everybody want to be the vice chair?
I'll do it.
Excellent. I'll nominate Commissioner Tessman to be the vice chair. Any other nominations? All in favor, say aye.
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 I
The record reflect that Commissioner Andre Tessman is the vice chair of the Planning Commission for year 2022. All right. Excellent. So now we have the council liaison report. And I see actually that council member Rob Watton, congratulations, Rob, has also joined us. So Jason, could you tell us who is our council member representative? Is it council member Johnson?
It is
Oh, there we
indeed.
are. Okay, excellent, excellent. Welcome.
All right, greetings. Let me pull up my notes here. All right. So the first thing, I have only a few notes here, just kind of reporting on the things I've been around for. The first is that Council Member Rob Watton was appointed unanimously by the City Council at our most recent meeting on the 10th and was sworn in just after. So welcome again to Council Member Watton. And we had 4 other council members sworn in. That was myself and Council Member Benson, for which I was going to ask Jason about that, because I do see Council Member Benson is in the attendees. I don't know if he was going to be promoted.
I certainly sent him the request. I can do it one more time, but
Okay.
he doesn't have to. It's a courtesy
Yeah,
we extend.
all
Yeah. Maybe he's gonna, oh, there it is.
There we go. And then 2 of the 5 council members that were sworn in were re-elected. Those were Brian Holloway and Matt Lassay. So congratulations to them on their re-elections. We also swore in a new mayor. So that's a lot of turnover at the governmental level, along with a number of vacancies that will soon need to be filled in the various departments. So that's one of the things that we're going to be working on very soon. So congratulations to Catherine Ross for being our new mayor. And we also swore in our new city administrator, Michael Sauerwein. And I look forward to getting to know him much better very soon. The last thing that I'll note is that we ratified a couple of emergency proclamations related to the recent weather event, which my understanding is it was one of the worst in decades. We certainly had a lot of ice up where I am. One of those proclamations was for shelter services during the freezing temperatures, which were particularly dangerous this last time around. And then also for some emergency snow removal. Some of the snow pileup was starting to definitely push our resources and our staff to their limits. So we approved those 2 proclamations. I don't think that I have anything else to say at this time, but I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can, most of which I'll probably just defer to Jason for the moment.
If I could understand the proclamations, the second one of stretching the resources, because there certainly was that snowstorm, what was it, January 3rd, 4th, that was like wet cement. I mean, that literally had people snowed in, and it seemed like quite a delay of clearing side roads. Did that emergency declaration refer to that to correct it, or what?
I would have to check the exact dates on when exactly it covered. I don't have it right in front of me. But I do believe that that was generally the time period that we were looking at, was that was when we were starting to really have some staff getting somewhat exhausted and needing some extra help to clear some of that stuff. I certainly experienced a lot of that very hard compacted ice that made it very difficult to move around. But Jason, do you happen to know that specifically offhand?
Let's see. It says so. It was issued January 5th. Sorry, I'm reading the resolution. It says beginning on December 26th, 2021, and going from there.
Okay, yeah, so it definitely covers the whole thing. Any other questions?
No.
All right, well,
welcome all the
I'll
new
let you
members.
continue on. Yeah, congratulations to all of you who has joined.
Yeah, and likewise, congratulations to all the new council members.
Chair, could I have a moment of indulgence?
Please.
So I hate to bring this up. However, there's a quorum of the city council present, which we can't have because this has not been noticed as a city council meeting or city council committee of the whole meeting. So I have to ask one of you to drop off.
I can
My apologies.
This is Ethan.
Good
Benson.
point. I'm really glad you noticed that.
I don't know if you guys can hear me or not.
Yeah,
this is Ethan Benson. I wanted to listen in on as much of this meeting as I could because I've been learning this month that I'm breathtakingly uneducated in how the city works, and I am very interested in what the Planning Commission does. But I do have an event that I am hosting in 10 minutes, so I wasn't going to be able to stay on for the whole time. So I will be happy to drop off.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Benson. I do apologize. It's not normal to have so many city council members at a planning commission meeting. And I know since many of you are new to the city council and to the planning commission for that matter, we haven't had an opportunity for all of the needed training on the Open Public Meetings Act, for example, the one that applies here. But I'll speak with the city clerk tomorrow morning and probably try to move that training up a little bit so that you're all a little more aware of the rules we need to follow on this. So thank you very much, council member.
I do have a question.
Of course.
If some of us are attending as just attendees, does that count under the OPM rules?
That's a good question that I'll admit I do not know the answer to. I'll have to consult the city clerk and the city attorney to get a better answer to that one.
Because I totally tried to attend as an attendee, but I was browbeaten into joining. So
yeah.
And Jason, I'm happy to hop off as well, since I was on planning commission before. It may be more helpful to the newer council members to listen in on this.
Yeah.
So it's really up to personal preference.
I have to get off in 3 minutes anyway, so it's all right.
Yeah, it sounds like if Councilmember Benson has to go anywhere, maybe that works. But I did also want to mention that if this goes for the council members and the planning commissioners, if you have questions about the planning commission and its business or what's going on, you should certainly reach out to me. I'm happy to have a discussion at any time about what's going on and things to pay attention to.
Well, that's really helpful. Thank you very much. I'm going to get off before we break any laws that we can't unbreak.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Ethan. And I saw that Councilmember Christensen and Watton had their hands up, but they're down now.
It sounds like they're
to weigh in on that point,
Oh,
but I was happy to hop off.
I just wanted to say hello, and obviously we need to do a little more coordinating before these meetings so that we don't run into this. So, but it's great to have everyone in attendance. And so that's it. And congratulations, Commissioner Commissioner Luke Ruziak. on your election, and Commissioner Tessman too. And I look forward to working with all of you at some point.
Likewise, congratulations on your appointment to the council. Excellent. Excellent. Well, let's press on. So we have agenda item number 8, comprehensive plan docket work plan.
Sure, I can speak to this. So what you see on the agenda is this is a public hearing for the comprehensive plan docket work plan only. So just the work plan. It's not really a public hearing for the docket items themselves. There's time for commission discussion of the docket items and the work plan later on. The purpose of the public hearing is to take input on the work plan that I wrote out in the memo, which is starts on page 60 of your packet, the Planning Commission packet. I'll give some brief background on this so you can, just so you understand if there are any public comments here. Under the city code, we have a docketing year, if you want to call it that, that runs from October to October. We solicit requests for amendments to both the comprehensive plan and the city's development regulations. This year, we received 3 requests to amend the comprehensive plan. And so under the city's code, the Planning Commission needs to consider a work plan at its first January meeting, which would be this one because we didn't have the previous meeting that would have been on January 3rd. And so the work plan that's laid out has the initial discussion tonight, and then commission review of the 3 requests over the following couple of months. And then the commission will hold a public hearing on the requests themselves on April 4th, and then make a recommendation to the city council on October 18th of 2022. So like I said, the commission will have an opportunity to discuss this more fully later in the meeting, but for right now, we're holding the public hearing to get public input. I do have to mea culpa this a little bit. We didn't provide very much notice for the public hearing, unfortunately. That is complying with the code because the code specifies a minimum notice number of days for things like conditional use permits. That doesn't apply to hearings of this nature. So that's certainly a gap in the code, first of all. And second of all, that's my fault that we didn't get this noticed more quickly. We did put this out on our social media. There was a notice in the paper that was published, unfortunately, just yesterday. So I recognize it's not a lot of notice. That said, as a legislative item, the Planning Commission can continue taking public input on the docket items throughout the whole process. There's no restriction on just to the public hearing. The city council will get this item as well. Regardless, the commission could recommend to not adopt them or to adopt them, but the city council will get them either way. And the city council can hear from residents and business owners and everybody else throughout this whole process as well, because it's legislative in nature. So we'll do better on the noticing in the future. I just wanted to draw that to draw attention to that up front, so you can yell at me that I did the wrong thing.
Okay, and I see a hand up from Richard Scheel in the attendee list.
All right, I turned your mic on, Mr. Scheel.
Okay, mic is on. So thanks. This is Richard Scheel, 6701 West Crestview Loop, Southeast in Snoqualmie. So I'm the person who submitted these 3 items in the docketing process. And just wanted to say I was glad to see that in Jason's memo to the commission about these, that the first 2 of the 3 that I offered as suggestions, he recommends including in the work plan for the commission for over the next couple of months. So, again, I definitely endorse those being considered by the commission to decide whether to make a recommendation to the council. I would like to encourage that even though Jason gave the advice of dropping the 3rd one as not being needed and waiting until the next major revision of the comprehensive plan, which is a few years out, Personally, I would still encourage actually looking at this in the work plan for the commission over the next few months to consider whether it's more appropriate to make a revision to the comprehensive plan for this particular item sooner rather than waiting several years. This particular item has to do with growth, how big the city is aiming for to be growing. The analysis in the memo does talk about, even though in some places the growth is referred to as targets, in other places it's referred to as minimums. I know that's been an active point of contention between some residents of the city and the administration in the past as to whether it should be minimum or target. What I'm encouraging is that it truly be treated as a target, what we really aim for what we want the size of our city to be. The analysis mentions that there are aspects that of course if you take it on in the work plan could be looked at during the next few months as to what do we really want the size of the city to be. My concern is if we wait for several years before the major revision of the comprehensive plan, that in the meantime, that growth will continue. We've already grown much faster than the regional planning organizations have wanted us to do. And basically, I'm saying if we wait for several years, that growth may wind up continuing, and we find ourselves being much larger than what most residents of the city really want the city to be. I think a lot of people moved here because it was a small city and they like that small town atmosphere. And my concern about not addressing it now rather than in the future is that it'll continue to grow without having that adjustment of the focus in the comprehensive plan. So I encourage you to take it to work, taking this into the work plan as well. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. I see Peggy Shepherd with the hand up.
There we go, and you should be able to unmute now.
Okay. Hi, my concern is I would like to see us work on the growth targets. I know that it's been contentious between the PSRC and the city of Snoqualmie, and I'd like to really have this fleshed out by our planning commission. And also, I'm not sure when this has ever been talked about by the public. But as being part of our comprehensive plan, I'd like to get some history on when this was brought into a public hearing in the past. And I would like to know if we're going to do a public hearing. I didn't see any mention of this becoming part of a public hearing for the future. So I would like to know when this will become part of the public hearing process, past and future. Thank you.
I see no more comments. From attendees, so I see no. So for that agenda item, Jason, is there anything further?
Not right now. Like I said, it's on the agenda later for commission discussion, so it'll follow the design review board items.
Okay. Then let's plunge into design agenda item number 9, DRB 21-0006.
Okay, so I'm here. I'm just curious about your pacing. Would you like to take public comment ahead of an explanation about the project, or would you like to wait on that?
I'd like to understand the project first.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and break into some screen share here. Okay, so we'll start here. So here's the city of Snoqualmie. This project is located on Maple Avenue in downtown Snoqualmie. which is here. And another view of it will look like this. This is a satellite imagery. So Maple Avenue, this one here, City Hall is here, Railroad Avenue is here, just for some points of reference. The lot in question that is having a development project, the scope of this development project is this empty lot here at this parcel number, but it does not have an address number attached to it. There's no building and there hasn't been for long enough that there is no address. So I will go ahead and skip to the next slide if I can let this Zoom thing get out of my way. This is just to show the current status of the zoning for this lot, which is here. It's the one highlighted in blue, but just for clarity, this is a business retail 2 zoning lot. So all this is to say, just kind of some background where we're at for this project. And now I'll kind of get into the nitty gritty of a project review like this. We have some new commissioners, so I kind of wanted to take a bit of a step back for just a moment and kind of discuss what we're doing here and why. So again, I'll try to get to my tabs, but the screen share gets in my way. Okay, so this is a staff report for this development. So ahead of time, I have looked over with Jason Rogers as well. We've looked over the development, all of its the details of this project. They've provided a bunch of models, displays, elevation diagrams, as well as like colors, material types, things to that nature. And we will then compare it to what the code has for us in terms of its historic review, its site planning requirements, there's landscaping requirements. As you can imagine, there's all sorts of requirements, especially in a historic district. Different cities can do things differently, but our city has a lot of historic requirements when the lot is located within the historic district of the city, and this one is. So what I'm going to be doing is kind of working through this document. I'm not going to go word for word. You don't have to listen to me read everything that I wrote here. But generally, I'm going to be kind of working through the details of this document that I sent out in the packet. And more or less, you'll see that it's broken down into a couple of the Snoqualmie Municipal Code, SMC chapters or sections. And we're going to kind of work through the details that they call out in each chapter. So I broke this staff report up into those chapters. So you'll see here, objectives, principles of historic design review. There's not very much there, but we broke it down. You'll see it for general, the general applicability. I'm sorry. There's also going to be lower on. I want to scroll this so you don't get motion blur there too much, but there's also going to be architectural standards. That's going to be a big component for review from the Planning Commission, which is acting as our historic design review board. So you get to wear 2 hats in this capacity. And so, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and switch it over to a better image of the project. And I'll give you a kind of quick understanding of the project's design and layout, and then I'll kind of work through that document and explain things. And then we'll kind of jump into a moment for questions, and we'll have Commissioner Murziak walk us through it. So this is a 3-story development project that is located on Maple Avenue, as I showed you on the maps. The first floor is going to be a retail, light retail, more commercial use, and that's required by city code for the zoning district that this is zoned. One of the requirements that you may find out later is that the residential use is no longer allowed for the business retail too. So a single family home couldn't go in its place. So one of the things working with the applicant was that we had to find an applicable use. So the applicable use in this case is first floor retail commercial use, but is allowed to have second and tertiary floors is what the code I believe calls out, apartments in this case. So that's what you'll see in this building, which will be the first floor is about a quarter of that retail space. And then the back of it is parking, and I'll show you a different image that helps that. And then this is the entryway, and we're standing on Maple Avenue, looking at the building space or at a slight angle. There's going to be 11 apartments in this building. There is one that is a little bit different. It spans 2 floors of the apartment height, and that is intended to be a master apartment, so to speak, of the building. And further details, and I'll scroll down, are some kind of the facade details you'll see here. There's a bunch of variations in the materials, and as well as the shape layout of the wood grain. So we'll talk about that more later as well. You'll also notice these silo type features on the side. This is for stairwells to access the rooftop. And there's actually 2 of them on each side. This is probably a better image for you. We're now floating above, looking at the back side of the building. So the silos are the entrance to the rooftop as well. And then the center here, you'll see an elevator overrun is what it's called. It's all the upper parts of an elevator that allow it to drop someone off at walking height off to the roof deck. So additionally, you'll see that there's a roof deck to this project with some light landscaping surrounding it. And yeah, so I'm going to bring you back up to a more simplified image of this development project and kind of work through some of the project details. And that means I'm going to have to pause my screen share for you, so you're not tracking with me. So some of the quick things to keep note on when we review a project like this, and I will note that the city hasn't reviewed a ton of big scale developments in the historic downtown. As you might imagine, a lot of it's been developed or it's very historical in nature. There aren't a lot of empty lots, so to speak, sitting around downtown. Though you might be able to think of them, there's not a ton. This isn't this isn't the middle of nowhere, so it has existing buildings. Generally, this is an oddity in that case, that this is a lot that is empty, has been empty. There is no development. There's no previous building that was there that this is now replacing. So that's a bit odd. First thing when you go into it. And then the other aspect of it that is a bit different is the size and scale of the building. Generally, we see a lot more minor repair projects in a historic design review. This is going to be a much more extensive development project. So with that out of the way, I will kind of scroll down to my next section here and make a couple points that this building is new, that it's not replacing any former buildings. It is not a contributing building, which is a category of building types in the city's historical landmark district. An example of a contributing building, we'll see a bunch of them this evening, but one of them would be the Woodman Lodge. Another would be the church, the Methodist, is it a Methodist church here on the corner, kind of near it? The former building that the Smoky Joe's Tavern was connected to as a contributing building. Essentially, a contributing building are important buildings to the 1940s era and before that contribute to the overall historical landscape of downtown Snoqualmie at the time that resolution or whatever was passed in the Snoqualmie Council. So going forward to some of the design features, I'm going to kind of move a little quicker. I've kind of been talking around this, so I'm not following this staff report directly. Sorry if that's frustrating for some of you, but it's easier for me. I can't just read this darn document and feel like I'm a sane person when I come out the other side of it. So some of the details that you'll see in the architectural standards that the Historic Design Review Board is going to kind of consider when it's reviewing this building is how it resembles or retains the historical character of other local contributing buildings. So I pulled up a couple examples of contributing buildings that are either on Maple Avenue or akin to Maple Avenue, and that's just to best connect to buildings that are close to the proposed site location. So I'll go ahead and share some of these with you and talk about them as I go. The first one I'll bring up. Sorry, did you have a quick question?
For clarification, right, there is a list of buildings that are considered contributing, right? There's a list, I think the code references a list on file with the city clerk.
I have a copy of the document as well. So if anyone wants to read the City of Snoqualmie's landmark district and contributed buildings document, feel free to let me know. I can probably get that to them. Essentially what it is a map It shows you the downtown area, and it calls out the buildings, and it actually has a bit of a blurb that describes what the building was used for, when it was used, if it burned down. In our case, there's many buildings that burned down and were rebuilt, and we see a different building now. And so, yeah, it goes into all those kinds of details. Yeah, and I'm not sure, but I believe there's about 25, maybe 30 contributing buildings in downtown Snoqualmie in total. Okay, so the first building I was going to show you here is called the Vaughn School. This is not a contributing building per se, because it probably existed well before any landmark details were coming up, but it exists in connection to a lot of the other buildings that are contributing buildings. So we're standing on top of the Northwest Railway Museum, which is currently, but it would have been a train station at the time. And it's difficult to imagine this, but this is, your 1910 downtown Snoqualmie. You're looking at the church here on the side, and then the Vaughn School here on the right. This is, if you see this little, I guess you call it a stable. I believe this stable is either very close or on the property line to the vacant lot that we're now considering the development for. Just as a bit of a historical context there. So this is a larger 3-story building with a clock tower. Vaughn School is what it's called. And kind of interesting detail here is all the buildings are facing towards the train tracks. They're not actually facing Maple Avenue. Kind of a unique bit there. And then some other buildings that are in the area that have a similar contributing features. That's not what I wanted. I have so many things open. Okay, this here is Smoky Joe's building. I don't know if you can tell from, okay, it does not want to be zoomed in apparently. Okay, I'm gonna go to my backup plan, which is to go look at a different building for a split second while I work on that one. This is the Woodman. This is, it's currently the Woodman, though it hasn't been open for a while because of COVID rules, but if you were there maybe 2 years ago, you would have seen the Woodman Lodge. It used to be a hall. I wish I could remember what the specific name of the hall is, but this is a upper 2-story type building. It's got high floors. You'll see one of the things you'll want to keep a note on as we go through it is kind of the facade details. You'll see the horizontal wooden planks. You'll see the style of the roof line and how they broke the roof line into pieces. This building here is one of the larger buildings in the downtown. You'll see it has kind of like a focus on the windows per the room, almost like a hotel. And if I could load up the other building here, I'm paused you guys for a sec and I'm trying to restart this app. That's all. It also is going to share a lot of those similar details. So it's going to have windows on every floor is one of the details. You're going to see a lot of the facade details are similar. There's a lot of wood in Snoqualmie at the time. So you're going to see a lot of our historical buildings are going to share a lot of the wood details. There's a combination of vertical and horizontal planking that we see. You'll see a lot of the wood parapet type designs, etc. Okay, I think I figured out why it didn't work. Because it's bungled, that's why. Anyway, so I'll go ahead and skip past that exact part there, if I may, for just a second. But needless to say, the Smoky Joe's building is a lot larger than it exists now. It used to be a 2-story hotel apartment type building, and it was larger down the street and kind of a more reflective. There you go. Okay. Smoky Joe's doors, you can see it at the angle, but you can see the larger 2-story building, horizontal siding. They chose a different style of roof parapet than you'll see standard. Usually you see it broken up into pieces. But yeah, okay. So going from that and now looking to the building that is being developed, I want to call out some of the design features and how they relate to the historic design standards. So some of the details we worked with the applicant were to have a primary and direct access to the facade, or I'm sorry, the retail commercial uses of the building that's called out in the code for direct access, and that's what you're going to see here on this first floor with these green green doors with the transom windows over the doors. That's another call out for the historic design review. Another part that's pretty critical and important to the overall feel and look of the building is that it retains the historic facade materials. So you're going to see brick here on the two sides, as well as a board and batten, and then a horizontal planking. And those are all three very, I guess, traditional for the Pacific Northwest, but specifically Snoqualmie in terms of facade materials. We also see the awnings here that cover the doors and the access points to the building. There's call outs for covering or what do you call it, fencing in, trash and things like that. That's done at the back inside of this building. I'll scroll down a bit, kind of if you imagine directly below this silo feature here, you would see on the inside some trash receptacles and things of that nature. In addition, the silos, while Snoqualmie itself is not a huge dairy industry in terms of its downtown building details, the Snoqualmie Valley overall does have a few silos. Dairies use them for many, in many locations throughout the valley. And this is just an effort to retain the kind of historical character of the valley. It's maybe not a specific call out to downtown Snoqualmie building, but in many cases, we wouldn't want to see a direct clone of a historic building. One of the details of the Snoqualmie Municipal Code is actually to avoid directly mirroring or copying an existing contributing building. Yeah, that's one detail. I'll keep scrolling down. There's a landscaping that is used to screen the parking lot on the back of the building. That is one of the requirements of the code. The screening here is a model of it. There's also a landscape plan in the packet that shows kind of the general size of shrubbery, though that specific detail will be monitored by our urban forester along with Jason Rogers and I in reviewing the landscape plans. Let's see. I think I want to maybe take a pause. I feel like I've been talking quite a bit, and I'm sure it's really, really entertaining stuff I'm given. But I think a back and forth may be a good point here, if that's okay with you, Commissioner Rizek.
Yes. Process check for Jason. Just a question. At what stage do I request public comments on a review of a DRB?
There's a little bit of, I'll admit it's not 100% clear. Typically you want to request public comment, however, before the commission starts any kind of discussion deliberation on the project. That way you'll have the benefit of whatever the public comments are, and you can take those into account. What we try to avoid though is that since ultimately this is a design review board decision, the public comments are not an opportunity for citizens to get into a debate with commission members or staff.
No, I understand.
So that's why we do it first.
We make sure we receive the comments. And then also as a process check, after the comments, first of all, I'd like to note Chris Aleph is in the meeting. I don't think we noted him, so welcome. Good, glad you're here. The second thing though is to propose to approve the DRB, vote on it, and then have a discussion to do the final approval. Is that accurate?
Well, what you would do, so I think procedure, I'm trying to think this through, similar to how the city council does it. I believe the way the city council operates is that somebody will make a motion, you need a second. At that point, you would take public comment. Following the public comment, you could then have discussion. I could have mixed a couple of those steps up, but you could, for example, and this is the planning commission, it could be a little more informal than that. You could certainly just take public comment without a motion on the floor, because people are certainly going to have thoughts on the project that they're going to want to share with the commission, regardless of whether there's a motion on the floor or not. So,
okay, so here's how I'd like to do it. First, I would like to open up agenda item number 9, DRB 21-0006 to public comment. And then after that, we'll take the motion. So are there any public comment to DRB 21-006, the rails? I see 2 hands up. Wayne, And I see Wayne. Can we?
Yep, I'm here. Yeah, anyhow, I have several concerns because that lot, I believe, like we just heard from the presentation, is in the historic district. And I believe Maple Street is the boundary for the historic district. And if the lot was on the same side of the street as City Hall is, it would not be a problem. But to me, it is a problem because of the height restrictions that we have, that we fought a battle in over 3 years ago, or right around 3 years ago. And the height restrict used to be only 30 feet, and we raised it to 35. This building is going to 40, up to 40 feet. And then with appurtenances above it, it can go up another 5 feet. And I'm afraid we're going to end up looking just like North Bend, where you can't see over buildings. Like you used to be able to drive through North Bend and see city or see mountain goats on the mountain. Now you can't hardly see the mountain. And also when we're doing this is the code that it refers to, there's a ordinance 1205, which refers to SMC 1720.040, which brings up the height restrictions like that and mentions that. And the only reason this building is getting is being commercial, if it was on not a commercial lot out of the historic district, it wouldn't be a problem. That's why I say if it was across the street like City Hall, because City Hall is not in the historic district. And then also the other issue is parking. We already have a parking issue downtown. And so you're going to have at least 14 parking spots on that lot. I seriously doubt it. The other thing is on Maple Street, most of the homes and residences along Maple Street have no parking except for the street. And I believe this is going to cause a big conflict with the residents that live on that part of the old historic downtown area. Let's see, I think that's probably about the only thing. And I know the reason the building's going to be, it wants to be 3 stories is because according to FEMA codes, you're not supposed to build residences. And I know Jason knows that. Jason and I know each other pretty well. But anyhow, the reason they do that, they put businesses underneath so they can put apartments above, which to me increases the residency. And you're not supposed to build residential buildings in the floodway and floodplain. But that's what it ends up doing. That's a way around it. And the developers are smart enough that they figured this out. And I really hope with the new membership that we've got on the council, welcome all of you. You'll probably hear me quite a bit because I usually go to meetings in person. And anyhow, for the council members that are listening in too, thank you for being on the council, and hopefully we'll hear from all of you. That's about all I got, Luke. You and Mr. Smith are about the only 2 that I really can know anymore. Anyhow, happy holidays.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you. And I see Richard Schill also has a hand up.
Hi. So I just was noticing one thing during the very tail end of the presentation about this, and I'm not sure if what was in the drawing that I was looking at was indicative of the things, but it looked like the building comes very close to the property line on either side. Although I wasn't sure if the images, done by the CAD program or whatever, were actually indicating the property line or not, but it seemed like if the edge of the image was really the edge of the property line, that building is extremely close to whatever would be on either side of that lot. I don't know what the requirements are on if the term is side yard setback or whatever, but seems like any home or whatever that would be right next to it would not appreciate looking straight up a 3-story tall wall right outside their window. So again, maybe they can comment on where the property line really is and how the building is positioned within the lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment, Richard. And I noticed there was an email that was received. Jason, is that going to be in formal record?
Yes, I believe there was an email from Christy Coughing that you all should have received. I think, I don't know if Gwen or Dylan sent it around, but one of them sent it around earlier this morning, I believe. So hopefully you've all got a chance to read that. It's part of the record technically for this project as well.
Okay, so all the commissioners, please take note of that. Any other public comments? I see no further hands up. Okay, now in preface to commissioner discussion, can I get a motion to approve DRB 21-006.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Second. So Chris Aleph gave the motion. Andre Tessman seconded it. Now open for discussion for the commissioners. And I wonder if, Dylan, if you could refer to, maybe show the drawing again, to at least refer to the property line concern that was raised.
Absolutely, I'll bring it up. So I'll try to find what imagery works the best in order to show the property line. So part of why I wanted to show the zoning requirements for this lot is to let you know that there's different setback requirements for different zoning areas. For the type of zoning that this is, the business retail 2, there is 0 lot line setbacks, but the choice of the applicant was to set the property back, I believe, 5 feet on each side and 10 feet from the back. And I'd be happy to. I do know that the one of the architects is in the, I was in the chat. That's not what I'm going to say. In the attendees, and I'd be happy to bring them in. And they, I'm sure, would like to correct me if I was wrong. Jason, do you see less in the?
Well, and I think relatively easy clarification as well of because I saw the documentation, the height that was brought up.
Yes. Okay. So let me go ahead and pull that up. If I can let my. Oh my goodness, go down, screen share. Okay, so the height of the building, here I can show you on this one right here, a lot easier. Wayne mentioned a couple of the height details, not a criticism here, but this is the exact design of it. The height of the building to this parapet, which is the reference point for the height of the building, is 34 feet 6 inches. The height requirement is 35 feet. And some of the obtrubances, the things that go above that are allowed, for instance, mechanical equipment coverings, mechanical equipment itself, the elevator overrun and the stairwell have a varying amount of height allowances to go over. The requirement is below 15 feet of the height limit. So in theory, if a building was 35 feet, it could have a 15 foot above that. This building is only calling out for a 12 foot 6 inches above the height that it's listed at, 34 foot 6 inches.
Okay,
I can go into detail. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I see that Commissioner Goodman has his hand up.
Yes, thank you. I just want to clarify, I guess, from staff, there's nothing in this proposal that is in violation of the code and design requirements and all that. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, and so that was kind of one of the things I was going to follow through with the height is the height is actually not a standard that the Historic Design Review reviews. It's actually it's written in code. It's very sharp and clear, and it doesn't have any gray room, and it's reviewed by staff. Specifically, it calls out the community development director, but it's important for kind of understanding the building. So I wanted to make sure you guys saw it here. But yes, Commissioner Goodman, there's nothing in the building that we've been reviewing this. We've been working with the applicant for many months now, actually, to kind of work out all these details before we would ever bring anything to you.
I think sorry, I just want to interject a little bit here. I think I'm trying to remember how to phrase this exactly. There is a code revision, and it's addressed in the staff report that let's see. I'm sorry, Dylan. Do you remember the pages, the applicable pages? Because I don't want to scroll. I'm trying to scroll through this thing while I'm talking. But there's
I think so. I think I might have it here in just
I'll be back further up. But
okay, I'm sorry. There's a lot to this staff report, so I'm gonna not scroll while you guys can.
Anyway, so there is a it's Dylan, page 6 of 12 of the staff report, PDF page 8. So there is standard. It's in the architectural design standards, and this is the one that's referenced in Ms. Coffing's letter specifically, that says, continue the pattern of massing, height, bulk, and setbacks established by the existing pre-World War II structures. All new commercial or industrial structures shall relate specifically in style, massing, materials, and fenestration to at least one contributing structure, preferably to one in close proximity to the new structure. But down one more page, Dylan. It's on page 8 of the PDF.
Sorry, you were paused
Oh,
in screen share. I'm sorry.
it's where are you right now?
Oh, I'm on a different document.
Oh,
there,
that's why I
Jason.
can't. Okay, sorry, I was looking at the packet, the full packet. So it's page 6 of 12 of the staff report.
Okay, no wonder I couldn't understand. What
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
talking
there
about.
it is. Okay, so this is the standard that is being referenced, and the following standard, which is on the next page, says building height shall be governed by applicable zoning standards in 1720.040. So this admittedly presents a bit of a disconnect, frankly, because we have one standard saying try to follow the massing and height bulk of what's already there. And then we have a zoning standard that says the height limit is 35 feet with certain allowances for appurtenances to go even higher. Those are not fully, you can't fully reconcile those, especially in a case like this, where the existing development on both sides is the existing development is largely single story or maybe some shorter 2-story homes, or of course, then there's some offices on the corner to the south and there's the Woodman at the north. So from there we start looking at a couple things. One, we're seeing that, well, there's a specific reference to in C that says building height shall be governed by this. That's a more specific standard than what the previous one is, which is a little more, it's more broad, a little more generalized. And we're also having to look at, well, what's the underlying zoning? In this case, it's a business retail, the BR2 zone. It's not a residential zone. It's not a lower intensity commercial zone. And so it leads you to an idea that if we were to try to much more strictly enforce the subsection B standard, we would effectively be perpetuating the single or possibly 2-story style of construction, which is both well below what's allowed by the zoning code as far as height allowance. It also means that second of all, the project would not happen because it wouldn't be economically viable. And third, we would probably never get anything built there. It would continue to be an empty lot forever and ever, because you can't actually build a new single family home on that lot. It's not allowed by the zoning code. So you're left with trying to interpret the code in a not absurd manner. And I'm exaggerating a little bit because it's not quite to that level. So this building's big, there's no denying that, but it's big within the context of what the code allows, and the bulk and mass is supposed to be addressed by the various design standards. Okay. With articulation, materials, things like that. The appurtenances that go higher, they're within what's allowed by the code. In this case, specific, Dylan left half it out. In this case, there's a map. The code says that they can be 15 feet or the height of the floor below, whichever is lower. In this case, the floor below is 13 feet, so they can go up to 13 feet. They're below that. Does it make for something that is very tall? Absolutely. I'm not going to deny that. It's 40 something feet in the air at its highest point. But the parapet, if you have that drawing, Dylan, from the side, that parapet there you see on the front is what, 30, at the very front of the building is what, 33 feet? Yeah. So that's, by the code, that's the height of the buildings. It's that 33 feet. Yeah, these other things go up higher. They're allowed to go higher. You start getting into design choices of where do you put these things to go higher. They have to have the 2 stairways for egress because the roof is occupiable. So you can't bend on that. They have to be a certain distance apart. They can't be right next to each other because that kind of defeats the purpose of having 2 exits. They also need an elevator for accessibility. So suddenly you have all these things that need to go up there. But the standard is 25% or less of the floor area of the roof, which they have met. So yes, the appurtenances are tall, yes, they're there, but they appear to meet the code. And so that's where Dylan and I were discussing this, and we went back and forth with the architect quite a bit. So I don't want you to think this was just that they proposed something and we quickly signed off. We've been around with them, I would say 3 or 4 times with tweaks to this whole thing. You'll recall from the commission's discussion back in December that they had some comments about some of the HVAC equipment and screening for that, and a wall that they had separating things. So this design has certainly changed a little bit. And like I said, I'll freely admit, maybe it's not what I would have chosen, but that's not what I'm here to do. I'm not the one designing the building. I'm the one looking at it for code compliance. And so that, and then the design review, or the historic design review board is looking at it from a standpoint of the design, do the materials work and things like that. So I hope that, and I'm sorry to go on for so long, but I hope all that context is helpful to the commission in seeing, and for the public in seeing why this is proposed as is and why staff thinks this is approvable as it is.
Okay, so let me.
And can I have a quick follow-up?
Yes, Commissioner Goodman.
And then I'll step off. And I suppose two other quick points. The first is, I think it's without commenting on the specifics. Of course, I think this is going to look out of place on that block because it's essentially the first lot that is developing under the current zoning, which actually applies to all the other homes on that street, right? So it's kind of there's nothing, it's a kind of an awkward first stage, I guess, in a long-term transformation of the street. And then the second quick thing, Jason, you just mentioned it, I guess, and I can't remember if this was said before, but particularly for the new members, correct me if I'm wrong, planners, our job here as commission is not to, it's strictly limited to determining whether the design of the building meets the design review criteria and not really to, pick wallpaper and stuff like that. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Goodman. I see Commissioner Lambert has his hand up.
Yeah, a couple questions for you. So the building height is 34.5 foot, not 33, as you stated in the document earlier, which is it's still under the 35. But I had a question about that. Are we considering rooftop decks as appurtenances? Because wouldn't the rooftop deck be above the level of the parapet as it shows in the picture, right, that we're all looking at?
No, sorry. Ooh, there's a lot of echo all of a sudden. Apologies. The rooftop deck and the parapet are the same height. This could be one of the modeling demo issues. If you can kind of see here, there's a bit of the parapet. It's hard. There's a couple like little layers going on with the design. So the parapet's a little bit below these chairs maybe, or do you a solid here in terms of identifying where the floor of the rooftop deck is versus the roof of the parapet. Does that help?
Yeah, but I mean, it begs the question of, well, I mean, one, you've got all the railing, and then I think the appurtenances, aren't they according to code they can only be 25% of the area of the roof?
I'd have to pull up the code section. Jason, do you remember what code section
Isn't that what Jason just said?
For 25%.
It's 1720.040. And so let me see here. Now you're gonna make me read it in greater detail because you're right, I didn't mess up the height. I was probably thinking of an earlier draft.
Is Les Seifert the architect?
He is.
Well, he's got his hand up, perhaps.
He should be able to speak. I promoted him to a.
Go ahead, Les. You're recognized.
Yeah, Seifert it is.
Seifert.
So yes, the modeling, we're still playing catch up on a few of the items, but the plan is for the rooftop to match the top of the parapet, the rooftop deck to match the top of the parapet. So therefore, it will meet the intent of the code and the building height Graphically, it's shown slightly higher, but we've kind of raised up and down quite a bit to get where we're at now. So a couple other items, if I could, just spend since I'm on the hook here. We by code are allowed to go out to the property line, and the development team has decided to pull back the majority of the building to 10 feet around all sides. And the only thing that encroaches closer to that is the stair towers, and we need that to penetrate beyond for exiting. You see the green doors on the left and the right of this image that's currently shown. So for the most part, this building in scale could even be larger, if you will, and still meet code. But so we're set back 10 feet, and majority of that is to be landscaped with some, like I said, the stair towers 5 feet, and as well as a walkway to exit to the right of way. Any other questions for me while I'm on the horn?
Yeah, I'll keep going. One other question, that lot that is currently there is in like a 3-foot depression off of the sidewalk, give or take. Is the building planned to build from the elevation of where the lot is now, or are you going to build that up to the sidewalk?
It'll be brought down. It'll kind of be balanced somewhat. The parking will be slightly lower, closest to the park, and then towards the street, it'll be slightly matching. So there'll be about a 6 or 8 inches difference between front and back.
Matching with the sidewalk, not the current elevation of that lot.
Plus or minus, correct, yeah.
Okay. That was all. I think that's all I have right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Lambert. Any other questions or comments from commissioners?
I interject just for a second. I think when they get deeper into civil design for this project, it's almost certainly going to drop down slightly, because for flood control reasons, they will have to balance cut and fill on the site to meet the flood standards. So, and you can kind of see it here from this front view that they'll probably have to. So the existing sidewalk is roughly midway where those parking spots are. They're going to have a slight down to that, because they can't bring in fill, is the point. So they'll have to naturally slope it down, but it won't be very obvious necessarily if you're standing there looking at it, because we're not talking about too much, and they have enough space in the front to add that gradual slope. But that's a design detail that they're going to work out through the civil process, which frankly they haven't had to fully complete yet, because they have to get through design review first. There'd be no sense in them having to suddenly redesign the whole building and scrap a bunch of civil work. So
you actually anticipated a question I had, which was one of the documents or permits requires a flood improvement permit, and so you're saying there'd be a slight grade that would allow that. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, so I mean, Commissioner Lambert's correct that the lot as it exists today is in a slight depression relative to the sidewalk level, and the street level likely for that matter. And so what they'll have to do, because they're not allowed to bring dirt in to level the site up to say the sidewalk level, because that would be fill within the floodplain, which is not allowed. They'd have to balance that. So they have to balance it somehow so that the overall net elevation of the site remains the same for flood reasons. To accomplish this, and like I said, as they dig deeper into their civil design, I'm sure they'll figure this out. They're going to have to slope the parking down, and I should be more certain. They'll have to slope from the street down through those angled parking spots in front to the new sidewalk. That's going to end up sloping down a bit to get the elevation of the foundation low enough such that they're not having to bring in a ton of fill just to make the site buildable, and to not violate the flood regulation. So again, I don't blame them for not necessarily showing that at this stage, because that's, I mean, literally the inches matter here, where an inch one way or another affects, how much fill you need. But the ultimate effect will be that there will be a slight slope down, which will not really be very visible when you're standing on the street because it'll be so, such a shallow gradient ultimately to achieve what they need. But yes, we're definitely paying attention to that.
Jason, there's also the right-of-way dedication that they're going to go through.
Right.
With the front of this property, which for those of you who are aware of Maple Avenue, if you're further on the corner, the angled in parking that is further set into the street rather than the most of what you see in downtown Snoqualmie, which is a little bit of grass, the sidewalk. This is actually almost 12 feet in and then the sidewalk. So there's going to be some room in there. And I'll try to pull up a map maybe to help see that. There's a lot of maps going on right now, though.
Potentially a street view will help visualize that as well.
Commissioner Lambert, do you have another comment?
I think Jason pretty much answered my question about the floodplain issue. That was my question, because I did know that you can't bring in fill to, it affects the flooding characteristics of the properties that surround it.
Okay.
I can also clarify another point with regard to the floodplain issue. This property is within the floodplain, but not within the floodway. Therefore, they can certainly build residential here. The residential just has to be elevated up out of the flooding area. If this was in the floodway, we wouldn't be having this conversation because residential is not allowed in the floodway, period. Doesn't matter if it's elevated or not.
Doesn't the building code or the designation stop residential from being built here anyways?
No, no, but under the zoning code, second floor and above residential is allowed, but you have to have first floor retail. So you could not build a single family home or a straight apartment building, for example, but you can certainly build this kind of project where you have ground floor office or retail uses and residential above.
Okay. Any other comments from commissioners or questions?
If I could. Oh.
Yes, Commissioner Tessman.
Yeah, hopefully let me know if I'm, off base or in the wrong period of discussion. I think the two concerns I would have, based off of the staff's description of our role here, I think it all comes down to, is this a building that we want as part of our historic downtown as it's designed? It meets all the code requirements. We've already covered that. My concern based off of that lens is as we look at, complementary structures in the historic district, I'm just unfamiliar with any that feature essentially a similar, outdoor living space up on the roof, right? So I think that would be pretty new. We focused on the railing and whether or not it meets the code requirements for that, but I'm concerned with the whole, deck living area. The other concern would be just I understand the connection that was made, I believe, by Jason on those silos, and I understand, the requirements for the commission are to ensure that we're not directly mimicking any existing buildings, but I see those silos as a departure from what we have in downtown Snoqualmie. So I would just put those two concerns on the table. I don't know if any other commissioners share those concerns or if I'm off base.
I tend to agree on the silos as well. To me, that just doesn't feel like part of the historic district. I think it's certainly, if you get out into other parts of Snoqualmie, it could be applicable. It doesn't feel like the right fit here, I think. And I'm not sure how others feel about that too, but it feels a little forced, I think, it's almost like trying to merge two different styles. I think, the one style obviously trying to play to sort of the Woodman design and some others that we talked about. To me, that just does feel like it is trying to mimic. And I know that's the language around mimicking pertains to renovations and the such, not necessarily new construction, but that's, I kind of kept coming back to that. And I think Commissioner Goodman made the point. I think it is kind of worth reiterating that this is, we had a lot of discussions 3+ years ago about the increase in height, and knew that this day was coming, and here we are. And I think this is the very first domino, but I think there will be a lot more dominoes to come after this. And I think we just need to be mindful of that, because I think this area is going to start to look a little different. I think if I'm another single family owner there, I'd probably be looking at this project, seeing, what can I do? And I think, we have to be, we obviously, we have restrictions on what we can approve or deny based on the code. And I agree with what Jason has said. I think, this fits the code descriptions, and, things like massing and setbacks are challenging, because we haven't seen this type of project before. I just think it's been a lot to wrestle with in my head. But I am also curious, and another comment that was brought up around parking. Have there been any other comments or concerns received from other? I appreciate the comments we've received today, plus the email letter. Have other neighbors and others nearby, have there been any issues or concerns raised about parking, or losing parking on street, things like that?
I'm trying to recall. If you give me just a split second, I just want to proofread one thing and then I'll know, but I haven't received that many comments on the parking. It's mostly to do about the architectural details that you've heard from a couple of the comments earlier, and also at the former meeting, of which a few of our commissioners were not present, but yeah, give me just a sec.
Can I ask, add the ask on the parking? How many parking spots are there for the 11 residents that are supposed to be living there?
There are 8 inside of the building, and I believe there are 5 outside, but I'll have to go back to the design here in just a sec. You could also ask Les. I'm certain he knows and can pull it up immediately, or knows it off the top of his head even, while I'm trying to proofread this document.
So let's table.
We have 14 stalls total.
14 stalls. Commissioner Mather, you have your hand up?
Yeah, just I'm new to this and I don't have all the history, but I'm looking at this building and I'm thinking about historic downtown, and we've been here, gosh, 13 years, and my kids have grown up, and we really enjoy the historic district. But we've got an empty lot, and we've got somebody who is has invested in that lot and is trying to build what looks like fits all the code requirements and looks like an aesthetically very beautiful building. So, I guess my only comment is I actually think it's kind of nice that we'll have something new and something that looks really beautiful, and aesthetically pleasing, in otherwise an empty vacant lot, which doesn't do any benefit for the community either. Nice to have some nice new residential options for people that want to live in our town.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mather. Commissioner Tessman?
If I could, just in response, 100% agree. Getting beyond a vacant lot would be an improvement to that space. Certainly, I believe Commissioner Lambert made the point, but forgive me if I'm wrong on this, but obviously we're going to be in actually it was Commissioner Goodman. We'll be in a transition phase with this building. But I think it's important to keep in mind, one, this essentially sets the tone for all future development, particularly on that block. And then two, looking at the satellite imagery, this is going to be directly behind the Railway Museum. So it's not just any lot on that street. It's going to be behind essentially the crown jewel of downtown Snoqualmie. So I guess one procedural question that I would have, being new, is what are the options here? Do we have to approve it tonight, under this consideration? Can we request modification and then subsequent evaluation? I guess, what are the options there? Pardon my ignorance.
No
I had the same question, by the way.
Okay. So I can kind of jump in there. So the options are, I mean, you more or less got them actually. You can approve without extra conditions. You can approve with conditions, or you can deny with justifications, so to speak. So way here at the bottom of this staff report, I tossed in some conditions of approval that this is more or less a boilerplate kind of approval with conditions. So they have to get all their building permits. You'll see stuff like that. But in theory, this could be added to. So we could easily add a number 6 to it, or you could knock some of these out. You can't knock out some of them. They're required no matter what. But you could add, for example, this building's, I don't know, I'm trying to think. Let's say it was a different building and it had some sort of synthetic facade material. You could definitely put in there condition approved with the condition that the facade material be made of cedar and not the synthetic siding that it displays in their models. It's happened before. I've seen that in some previous historic design reviews. So that's an example of kind of what the condition would look like, the condition of approval. And then yes, you can deny the whole project and make them come back. That's also obviously there too. If you deny it, you do have to justify the why you're denying them, on what grounds. So you'd have to, in a sense, be kind of looking back through the architectural standards and be able to say, this architectural standard is the one you're not meeting. This is what you need to achieve in order to achieve it. So that will be the kind of between details there you'll have to get.
Absolutely, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, just to clarify, I mean, I've done this actually myself and Commissioner Smith for a number of years, and we don't get to say, I don't like it, right? I mean, so is it to code, and is it, in something really egregiously violating the historic character of downtown? And Commissioner Tessman, you're kind of almost there. You're kind of in the gray area. I would like to echo what Commissioner Mathers says. I do think it's been, 20 years or longer since there has been any new construction downtown, in historic downtown. And so having, this building versus a vacant lot, I think is a real positive improvement. And we certainly want to just take that into account. Now, could you go, Dylan, could you go back to the proposed conditions? And while you're doing that, Les, could you comment on the silos? I'm just curious, is there any other consideration you made other than the silos? Because that actually came up in December as well, in terms of the look and feel of the silos being, in concert with the historic downtown.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back in history, you'll see that you've got the grain silos out on the farms, but then when you bring the product into the downtown areas, they need to have a place for grain to be stored. And so it's fitting within the time period. You need a place to store. You're just not going to store it in a warehouse. It's typically stored in a silo. So it kind of meets the intent, and the purpose of the silo obviously was to wrap, if you will, the stairs going up, and so it kind of made it feel historic versus just providing a vertical wall with siding. So that's our thought there. And it's something that the building owner is very interested in.
Okay, Commissioner Tessman.
I appreciate that, Mr. Seifert, and actually kind of went to the question I was going to ask, which was, I mean, is it possible to achieve what you need to with this building, right? Which is the stairway, the 2 different stairwells, without the silo itself? I'm assuming that's completely, for aesthetics. You could just have essentially the stairwell and its outline with that same cladding and achieve the same end. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Matt? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I think given that that's possible, I think we're still, advancing architecturally, design wise by having that cladding while still respecting the existing architecture in downtown Snoqualmie. Personally, I think those silos are just too much. And so those are modified. I think that would be spectacular.
Yeah, we also held those back to middle of the building. And so if the street further develops, they will somewhat slowly disappear as well.
Commissioner Mather?
I'm just listening in. I guess, man, Commissioner Tessman, I got to tell you, I respect everything you're saying. I don't disagree with anything. We've got to keep the beauty of our historical district. And I don't know how many times my kids have ridden the Thomas the Train thing down there, and we love that place. I just think that if the architect and the private landowner is amenable to maybe some slight modifications, they've done a lot of work to make sure this fits within all of our codes. And I actually think it's going to look really nice. And I think it's an opportunity to bring maybe, another 8 families or so into Snoqualmie, and we're dying because we don't have enough housing for a lot of people that might be smaller in nature. I'm sure it's not going to be inexpensive given what the real estate prices are, but there's a lot of people that are a lot of great families that want to come up here. And man, what an opportunity to live in historic downtown and live in a beautiful building like that. So that's just, I guess, my commentary.
Thank you.
If I could,
Yes,
I think let it be clear. I think the ultimate impact purpose of this proposed design, specifically the fact that we would have, multifamily housing in downtown Snoqualmie, I think that's fantastic, right? I think that addresses some of the concerns pointed out by Mr. Shield, for example. As we have job creation, we should have similar home creation for those jobs. Now, I don't know exactly what the match would be based off of the market rate of those apartments. You're right, but so that's not lost on me. I think that's completely valuable. My position is if we can have what I think is a minor modification really of the silos, we still achieve the building. We still achieve those housing units.
Yeah,
I think we're in a good spot.
Yeah, the win-win.
Okay, Commissioner Lambert.
I just sorry, Commissioner Tessman, to his concern or question about the silos. Is there any, Dylan, you did a background check on all the historical images of downtown Snoqualmie. Do we have any historical-ish instances of these?
Silos specifically? No, I could not find any in the historic downtown Snoqualmie. I definitely can find them in the valley. That's not hard for me to do. Not even very far from downtown Snoqualmie, but
probably over in Meadowbrook. Yeah, I'm sure.
Exactly. Yeah, where the hot farm were.
That makes sense. I was kind of like, I was hoping for a smoking gun there, to be honest with you. Would have made it easy.
I did try, but I'm sorry.
So 2 questions back to, I know I'm trying to stay on task, but now I'm looking at the view from the overhead of this whole unit, and I do have to question to Jason on the code when he was made reference to it. It's 5B3 capital B, or no, 5B4 is the code. In no event shall the total area occupied by rooftop appurtenances or enclosed within their screening exceed 25% of the total area of the building footprint. That seems questionable, and I'm just looking for clarification on that. The other question I did have specifically for staff is, I'm assuming that these are 2-bedroom apartments kind of places, or are they more studios?
Mostly 1 bedroom.
Mostly 1 bedroom. Okay, so maybe I'm just wondering if there's anything in our code anywhere that the residences have to provide the ample amount of parking for the people that are going to reside in their location. Because if not, then they're putting those vehicles out on the street, which, like, a number of people have said, that does put stress on parking on Maple, which I've got a number of people asking me about, because I live down here. And then my third one is, do the future residents, will you announce to them that they have 2 solid weekends of Thomas the Train nonstop? Because I think that should be a warning.
They'll figure it out really fast. I certainly did. My first year working for Snoqualmie, said, I'm not going to be in town around that.
Back to my 12-year-old son, he'll be like, let's go buy one, Dad, because
Commissioner Lambert, specific to your question about the appurtenances, if you look all the way back up at C2, we're really looking at the appurtenances that exceed the 35-foot height limit. So anything below 35 feet essentially doesn't count, if that makes sense. So that means the parapet wall, which is below 35 feet, doesn't actually count here. Only those things that are above 35 feet. So the 2 stairwells and the elevator shaft and the mechanical screening.
Right, and then the bar, the casework, the railings, and the half wall that goes around the rooftop deck. And then, like, my question would be, then you also have the landscaping and shrubbery around the outside of that deck to make it, even taller. I do have, like, I get the argument that this is a very tall building and we are trying to get every inch out of it.
I think my response to that is essentially comes down to a question of how we interpret the code here. And there's certainly a hypothetical where you could consider literally anything that goes above 35 feet to be an appurtenance. I don't necessarily subscribe to that view entirely. Things like the chairs or the tables, for example, which are completely movable. So they're not a permanent fixture of the building. I definitely don't consider it to be an appurtenance. It's a piece of furniture. And then things like the trees, or even the grill, which admittedly are somewhat permanently fixed, don't even really fall into this. I don't think fall into this appurtenances thing. I recognize reasonable people can disagree on that.
Well, right, then if they don't fall into the appurtenances, then should they be up there?
At the end of the day, that's for the director to really figure out. I think the planning commission's role here is saying, does the design fit, within the context of, the massing and things like, and the materials used and things like that. Because I think if you end up in a situation where you're going to count things like that, you're going to effectively deny that rooftop decks are, or you're going to effectively say you can't have a rooftop deck. Nowhere else, but that's not explicit anywhere in the code that rooftop decks are prohibited. The flip side is nowhere to say they're allowed. So it being a gray area, I'm inclined to say, well, they're not specifically prohibited, which means they're probably allowed in this, something like that is allowed. I mean, it's not like we're adding, a whole nother story of the, enclosed story of the building. That said, and this goes for some of the other things that have been discussed by the Planning Commission tonight, if the commission thinks any of these things are potentially problematic, we do have ways to address that through, frankly, changing the code. That's definitely within the scope of the commission's discussion, separate from this design review board item. We could recommend the city council take a look at some of these things, and they'd probably remand it back to the commission to look at and say, okay, so now we've actually gotten a project. Here's the 5 things we've identified where the code's not clear, inconsistent, maybe just not appropriate, and let's look at that. And this is what happens when you don't have new buildings come in under your codes, is you say you never get a chance to test your code. So I think this is another example of the code is simply not providing enough guidance, and we should fix that. That's ultimately for the commission to decide on its own. But from where I sit in the director's chair, I don't consider those things to be appurtenances. I think they're accessories on the roof.
And with that in mind, it is less than 25% or 17%, whatever the code is. It is to code.
Correct.
With your interpretation. Okay.
That's correct.
All right. So Dylan, if you could call up, I'd like to call us to vote. I think we've rung this out. Could you call up the conditions that you had there? So what I'd like to do is propose that we vote on this with the existing conditions here. And if there is a desire to add a condition, then we vote on that at a separate deal. So I'm going to propose initially that we approve DRB 21-006 with the 5 conditions as listed, and I propose that to the commission so exactly as listed here. All in favor, as I've stated that, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
So we have 2 nays. Actually, let's do this. 2 nays and how many ayes?
Aye.
3 ayes. Now let me do it this way.
So I heard 2 definite nays. I'm not sure exactly how many ayes. You could proceed to a roll call vote.
Yeah, I could say
Entirely clear.
Let me do that. So let me go up to the deal. So
Can I ask a clarifying question on the proposal on the table?
yes,
The proposal is that we are accepting the design as is.
that was my first proposal. If
And then
that
we're
not
going
being
to-
the case,
And
then
then
what I
once,
was going to do is recommend we propose an additional condition.
On a second vote.
so we're going to approve it as it is, and then come back on a second vote, and then say that we want something else.
Said we want additional, if we want an additional condition, say no, you don't approve it as is. So I got 2 no's on that. And basically it sounds like this is to code. The biggest issues that I've heard from Commissioner Tessman and really Commissioner Tessman was about the silo thing, if we want to make that a condition or not. I mean, that's what I've heard from really ringing this out. I think in general, the commission is saying, we really appreciate the work of the staff that this is to code. We really appreciate the work of the architect and whatnot, trying to make a very nice building here. There were a little concerns about the fit of the silos in the historic area. We could, these things that you brought up, Commissioner Lambert, I believe would be part of a code change and not as part of DRB 21-0006. Yes. Jason?
So, thank you, Chair. So from a parliamentary procedure standpoint, you already have a motion on the floor to approve with the conditions as stated. So then the next appropriate motion, should a commissioner wish to make one prior to a vote on the main motion, would be to move to amend the list of conditions.
Oh, very good. Thank you. Appreciate that.
So that way you don't have to go through the step of approving the conditions as is, because you already have that motion going. So you can, at this point, you can just start motioning to add conditions if the commission so chooses.
Okay. And I wanted to see where the commission was. The two who voted nay on approving as is, were you wanting to add a condition to this? So Commissioner Tessman?
Yes, that's accurate.
And can you state the condition you'd like to add?
Yes, just removal of the silos in favor of continuation of the stairwell design without the silo.
So architect, do you understand that condition as described?
We understand it, not in favor of it, but we understand it.
Okay, you still would have, and just to clarify, you'd still have cladding around it. It just would not be looking like the silo.
We understand that, but we're not in favor of it.
And I'd also just ask to maybe change some of the language of the condition just to make it all planner speaky, you know?
Okay, go ahead.
I would suggest that you require that they modify the facade to not resemble a silo and choose to use a historic material siding instead, something of that nature.
Let it be clear. I don't think I actually have a problem with the siding. That's fine. I understand that some modifications need to be made. You know, we're not building in 1910. We're building in 2022. I get that. So in plain language, it would just be remove any feature resembling a silo, something to that.
For the sake of furthering discussion, I'll second the amendment.
Okay. Dylan, do you have the amendment captured?
Yeah, I think I do. Remove the silo featuring the silo detail on the facade. I think I can list that rather easily.
Remove the appearance of the silo covering the stairwell.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah. And that, and again, I understand that there was, a strong desire there. However, there was nothing historical that we could find that validated that. Okay, so we'll have 6 conditions. The 6th one we had just done. And so request then to vote on the approval of DRB 21-0006 as amended.
Excuse me, Chair, you would need to vote on the amendment first
to
see if that has majority support. And then entertain additional motions to amend.
Yeah. So can I get a motion so I got a motion and a second. Can we vote on the amendment as described? All in favor, say aye.
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 All against, say nay.
Nay.
Name.
2 nays. Who's that? Commissioner Leff
I am one of the nays. That's correct.
and Lambert. And what was the reason for your objection?
Pardon me, Chair, for interrupting again. The ayes clearly have it. I don't believe that they need to necessarily explain their nays. They certainly could if they choose, but certainly the commission could have additional discussion now because you do have the motion as amended is now what's in front of you.
Right.
So
and
you could entertain further amendments.
No, I'm not looking for unanimous. I just want to understand, Commissioner Leff, I haven't heard from you. What was your concern with the amendment?
My concern with the amendment is I think the building as it's designed and been architected meets all of the requirements and the aesthetic for the downtown area. So I don't think it's necessary to approve the project.
I see. And Commissioner Lambert, were you the other nay?
Not me.
That was the other name.
Oh, Commissioner Goodman?
I just feel as long as it meets the intention of the code, I don't think we should be overruling the architect.
Could I respond to that?
Commissioner Tessman, go ahead.
With all respect, Commissioner Goodman, certainly you have much more experience than I do. I would just, and maybe my understanding is wrong, so I stand fully ready to be corrected. I would just say this commission's job is specifically to preserve the character of this historic district, which is why it's a design review board. So I appreciate your position and I understand it. I would just communicate that position.
Okay. All right. So from a parliamentary procedure, we did vote on the amendment. The ayes do have it. I did want to understand the reason for the nays. So there is a additional basically condition that the silo be modified to not resemble a silo, and the rest of the building is approved as is. So with that in mind, then as amended, I'd like to request approval of DRB 21-0006, the rails as amended.
Seconded.
Okay. If you approve, vote aye.
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 Disapprove, say nay. Okay, the ayes have it, and that does pass. So really appreciate the passion and also your forbearance as I'm working on the parliamentary. I do think we have rung out a number of things. I also think it's a matter of compromise that everybody doesn't necessarily get everything they want, but I do think we have wrung this out well, and compliments to the architect and the owner for laying it out there for downtown. I didn't want any, concern from that perspective. I think there was general, admiration and approval for doing that, but nonetheless approved with the condition. Okay. Let's see if the next one is long. Item number 10, DRB 22-0001, Ingles and Volcker's signage.
I'm getting caught up. I had to close a lot of tabs. So the background on this is that for those of you who were not here at the former meeting where the building at 8150, which actually has 4 tenant spaces in it, Angle and Volker's, Cafe Mini, Gianfranco's, and I think Body Focus. They're all part of the same building. They just have different units within the building. They redid the facade work of the entire front face from Railroad and River. And in doing that, they have kind of come to the need where they wanted to update their signage as well to kind of reflect the new designs of their building. Okay, I'm here now. So we'll start with Angle and Volcker, but in theory, we're actually talking about 2 signs tonight. It's one building, but multiple tenants. So you'll see that there's actually 2 signs involved here. They're going to be kind of similar, so you can kind of think of them as a pairing, but we're definitely going to go through them one at a time. So Angle and Volker's here has a sign on 2 sides that reflects the current current layout of signage that the Farmers Insurance, which is the former tenant of the corner lot, had 2 signs on both the river and the railroad roads there. You can see it back here in the corner. I'll try to find a better image in a second. Angle and Volker's is going to more or less replicate that, bringing it in. The Farmers Insurance is here. In the past, Edward Jones has been slightly over, and Edward Jones again has been slightly modified from that location. There's been multiple examples of the dual signage on both these roads. So this Angle and Volker's above the kind of main windows of the unit is not unusual. The current size is within the allowed size of a frontage window or frontage sign for the city in this tenant space and in the downtown historic district. The design, here's the other side, by the way. The design is rather simple. It's the logo and brand and color, I won't say color language, but the color palette of the brand that the tenant space is occupying. It's a very simple black lettering, red as an accent on the end, and white kind of background. Has a light bar to illuminate it from the top. It's made of this is a common material we see a lot in signage design nowadays. A lot of kind of a metal sign with a thicker surface lettering. So what you'll see here called out additional lettering that's brought forward, kind of add depth to the sign. So it's not just I guess a vinyl wrap, as you would kind of sometimes also see. you'll see that made of acrylic. It's another common material. It doesn't break down in the sun, doesn't crack and split like you'll see in some older plastics that were used in signage. So this is a pretty common design nowadays. I wanted to add one detail, and that's that you're going to see on here that there's awning changes. That's not for review of this here. This was just we ran into a bit of a time crunch, and these are the sign designs that they have, but they took the awning off of historic design review. So apologies for the kind of cluttered layout here, but yeah, so I'll stop there. I think it's a good place to leave it and hear questions and answer them.
So are there any public comments in reference to the sign? Seeing none, let's move on to, I will look for a motion to approve DRB 22-0001 Ingles and Volker's signage. Looking for a movement.
Second.
Motion.
I motion.
I have a second.
I second.
Second, so that's Commissioner Lambert motioned and Commissioner Tessman second. So now for discussion, I see Commissioner Leff has your hand up.
Thank you. Thank you for recognizing me. Question about the acrylic material. I know red in particular has a problem with fading in sunlight. Does this work better in sunlight over time? I can't tell you how many red signs I've seen downtown that have all yellowed over time.
Yeah, there's some level of all materials that are gonna, whether they, this one is gonna be UV painted. I just know that from conversations that I had with the designer. But most materials now, it's actually one of the reasons why we're seeing kind of a shift away from some former UPDE type plastics and things like that, because they yellow over time or they color fade. It's kind of it's one of those interesting things that's changed in sign technology over the last maybe 10 years. We're starting to see this come way more into affordability, and now we're seeing it as almost the standard. And because it has so much better wear over time, it doesn't grow mold as badly as some other types of signage choices. It doesn't turn green, it doesn't tend to get a lot of dust on it, and it doesn't tend to fade over time as often. Every material you ever put in the sun will fade. So don't get me wrong in saying that it won't, but from my understanding of working with these materials and coming up with reviews on signs, this is probably one of the lesser fading types.
Understood. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Anything else, Commissioner Leaf?
No, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, then I'd ask for a vote on approving DRB 22-0001 Ingles and Volker's signage. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, its motion carries. The Ingles and Volker's sign is approved. Let's move on to agenda item number 11, DRB 22-0002 Cafe Mini signage. Wait, am I pronouncing that right? What is it? Cafe
Mini. Yep,
Mini.
you got it.
Cafe Mini signs.
Yeah, so a bit of deja vu here. It's the exact same sign company, manufacturing, same everything. This time you won't see a accent red and, obviously it's not part of the branding of Cafe Mini. Just a gray and then a more solid black with the acrylic as well, and the wrapping around the metal framing. So very similar to last time. This is actually slightly smaller, so even more certainly within the height, or not height restrictions, the size restrictions of signage.
Okay, at this point, I'll ask, is there any public comment to DRB 22-0002 Cafe Mini signage? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve DRB 22-0002.
I move to approve.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any questions or discussions? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask for a vote to approve DRB 22-0002 Cafe Mini signage. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? So that motion carries.
Commissioner Chair Marusiak, I am sorry to interrupt. I believe that motion was made by Commissioner Aliff, and then who was the second?
There, Lambert.
Lambert. Okay, thank you.
So, okay, good. Now we're on to agenda item number 11, the comprehensive plan and municipal code docket and work plan.
Thanks, Chair. So let me screen share. Hold on a sec. I get my right thing up here. Oops. All right. So docketing. So I won't go over the background too much. This has been in a memo you saw back in December, and I described most of it earlier. I'll focus instead on the requests themselves. So originally we received 5 requests to amend the comprehensive plan or development regulations. Following some further discussion, the requester, Mr. Shield, withdrew the 2 regulation requests because they were out of scope. They were addressing non-development regulation areas of the code. So we're left with the 3 requested amendments to the comprehensive plan. These, this is the summary you can see here of the 3 requests, all for the land use element of the city's comprehensive plan. The first one is about water rights. The second is about balancing job types with housing types. And then the third one is redefining growth targets to be targets rather than minimums. You had the public hearing. You heard from Mr. Shield and Ms. Shepard about those. I'll get down to those in a moment. And then I just believe I discussed the schedule earlier. So the specific action tonight that we're asking the commission to take is to adopt the work plan, because that's what the code says you're supposed to do. So you're not making a decision on any of the requested amendments at this time. You'll have plenty of time through this whole work program to discuss whether you decide to address none of them or all of them over the next several months. So the first one is about water rights. And you can see the analysis I went through looking at what language is in the comprehensive plan today. And so that's in section G of the land use element. It talks about, it has references to the city's currently adopted 2013 water system plan, which is the current one currently in effect. The city does have an updated 2021 water system plan that is currently being reviewed by state agencies. So it is not fully approved yet. The council has adopted for sending to state agencies, and that's currently what's going on with it. The comprehensive plan certainly discusses, development of the mill site or any of the city's urban growth, unincorporated urban growth areas, the UGA areas, would require additional water rights to be secured. And then notes that the request would essentially seek to strengthen language along these lines. So because the current language is pretty generalized and vague, this is something worth discussing by the Planning Commission as to whether the current language is appropriate, whether it should be strengthened or adjusted in some other way to talk about water rights. So my recommendation is to continue with discussion of this in your work plan. The second request is to address the balance of job types with housing types. And so this is getting into a higher level of detail than the comprehensive plan currently possesses. The current comprehensive plan addresses the overall jobs housing balance, which is to say, let's make sure we're balancing the number of houses, whatever type of housing that may be, with the number of jobs, whatever types of jobs those may be. Mr. Shield's request points out rightly that we've had an increase in service level jobs of late. However, the housing we've been building mostly as part of the Snoqualmie Ridge build out has been, mostly single family homes of medium to large size that are intended for families. They, in general, could not be considered affordable housing or workforce housing, as those terms are generally used or defined. Certainly, we built the Panorama Apartments Affordable Housing Project recently, which is providing needed affordable housing in the community, but it's of course nowhere near enough. So you can see the comprehensive plan addresses this in several places, not just the land use elements. It's addressed in the vision and policy plan, which is element number 1. Mostly, it's also discussed in element 3, the economic development element, and that one specifically just discusses jobs housing balance without regard to matching housing and job types. There is an appendix to the economic development element that talks about recommended target industry clusters, but since that's more focused on job types and economic development, and it's not focused on housing, that's left in there without really a relation to housing types. All that said, my recommendation is to continue discussion of this item because it is absolutely a worthwhile item for discussion, especially as the city thinks about what's the future of Snoqualmie going to look like. The final one is about growth targets. And you heard Mr. Shields comment about it. My analysis is a couple-fold. So first of all, we have what state law says, which is that we are required by law to provide at a minimum enough zoned land, enough capacity that is, to accommodate the target as set out by the county. So in that regard, state law is certainly clear that the target is a minimum. We have had the discussion with the Puget Sound Regional Council. There was, in fact, a very large discussion the last time this city updated its comprehensive plan, and it also this discussion applied to several other cities in a similar position to Snoqualmie, where this city and others were planning to accommodate more growth than the target assigned by King County. PSRC was at the time attempting to interpret the target as a maximum, as a cap, and not a minimum, and refused to provide approval of the city's comprehensive plan, which would have negative effects on the city's ability to compete for largely transportation infrastructure grants. That discussion went on for a while. The city got conditional approval eventually, and then full approval after much continued discussion back and forth. The origins of that discussion are quite involved. I think Commissioner Goodman's probably aware of some of the details from his work. Needless to say, the city does have growth targets for both housing and for jobs that were adopted by King County. Those run from the period 2006 to 2031, and that is what the comprehensive plan currently covers. The city, of course, planned to exceed those, partly due to already programmed development in Snoqualmie Ridge. So in some respects, the target as assigned was always going to be, unless they had raised the target to meet what was already programmed for Snoqualmie Ridge, the city was always going to exceed it. As we move forward now, there is a new target that has been adopted by the King County Council. That's in the recent countywide planning policies update. I will have an update on that for the Planning Commission in the next, probably next month or so. That new target will need to be incorporated into the city's next major comprehensive plan update, which is due to be adopted by June 30th, 2024. Taking all this into account, my current recommendation is that the commission do not consider this amendment at this time, because I think that this discussion about how much the city is going to grow, and whether the city decides to plan to simply, if you want to call it, simply meet the target as assigned by King County, or plan to exceed that target set by King County, is a discussion that is better rolled into the city's major comprehensive plan update that's due in 2024. Because right now, amending the current plan wouldn't really have any effect. And this discussion is much better focused on the major update, so we can take into account what's the new target and how are we going to deal with that. So it's not that I think it's without merit. I definitely think the discussion is one the city absolutely needs to have. What I'm saying is I don't think this discussion is worth having right at this very moment. I think it is going to start occurring, frankly, later this year and over the next couple of years.
And just to clarify, Jason,
Yeah.
The comprehensive plan that is going to be updated in 2024, you said, right?
Yes.
Who's involved in that update?
CD department staff, the planning commission, the city council, we're in the process of formulating, a lot of people are going to be involved, including the planning commission,
right.
Members of the public. We've started laying the groundwork for it internally already. We have a housing plan underway. There's some initial data gathering, and we're working on the work plan for updating the entire comprehensive plan, all the public outreach we're going to need to do, et cetera, et cetera. So that's going to really start ramping up later this year.
So you're saying you're not discounting number 3 at all. You're saying there's ample opportunity for the United Council and Commission to wrestle that into the ground.
Correct.
As part of the 2024 comprehensive plan. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So I definitely understand where Mr. Shields coming from. My perspective on it is just a little different, where I like I said, I want to give us a full and fair, not even here. I want this to be discussed by the city, because I think it's of critical importance to how we structure the comprehensive plan and what goes into it. My opinion as the director is that this discussion around the current comprehensive plan isn't going to get us anywhere, because we're about to amend the plan with new growth targets we're going to need to deal with, and we've already, what's done is done, for better or worse. And depending on your opinion, we are where we're at, and nothing over the next couple of years is going to be affected by this discussion. The mill site's already underway, for example, and following that, the next question really is now what? What are we going to do about the urban growth area, for example? That's a huge discussion. That's the discussion that's going to be part of the plan update. And the reason why I say nothing we can do is going to affect it is because the mill site's already in the entitlement process. So nothing we do is going to change that. They're already vested to codes that were in effect. So we could quite literally, we could change the growth target to 0 and plan to do 0 growth, and the mill site could continue, if that makes any sense. So that's why I don't want to take this on now. I just don't think the timing is good for this in the context of the current plan.
Okay.
As for the next steps, you can see them here. Certainly the commission should discuss the individual requests, because the individual requests affect the work program. I certainly built in time to address request number 3, if desired. Here you see that on March 21st. You could either discuss it then, or you could just have commission deliberation then, or we could cancel the meeting potentially. But this is how we're set up to work through it. So I'm happy to take questions, and the commission can of course enter into a discussion.
So these dates are planning commission dates, right? Yeah,
Correct.
1st and 3rd. Yeah. Okay. And there'll be other.
I recognize
things.
there's likely to be some, you'll see that the February 22nd meeting I'm considering canceled. That's during the President's Day week, which I know is, a lot of schools have that off. Certainly the CD department right now is under pressure because of the staffing situation. And then I'm showing meetings all through March and April. I definitely recognize that spring break starts intruding at some point in there. But I'm trying to craft something that's realistic and gives the commission enough time to look at all these things.
Okay, I see Commissioner Goodman has a hand up. Comment on the work plan?
Yes, thank you. So I am skeptical about both requests 1 and 2 being on the work plan. So maybe staff can address my concerns. For item 1, that to me does not sound like something that belongs in the comprehensive plan. That to me sounds like a development code issue. And I'm wondering, if this should be considered in the context of the comp plan at all.
I think you're absolutely right that ultimately we would need to change some codes if desired. I think where the discussion is useful is really determining how does the city want to address potential development where water rights are not necessarily in hand, so to speak. Right now, the way the plan is set up is we don't just, if you essentially reject them and that's the end of the game. Right now, we wouldn't necessarily reject it. We would work with them and say, okay, look, you're gonna need to secure water. So it's, to a certain extent, it's just changing where the discussion point exactly is happening, or the decision point. I'm gonna scroll down to Mr. Shields' exact request here. So you can see that, because I did summarize it, but I don't want to necessarily mischaracterize it. So certainly this is something we could put into the comprehensive plan, I think, where we could simply say that the city, the city doesn't want to consider, or the city should not consider development proposals for which water rights are not secured. We would then translate that into the code to say, you need to have water or you're instantly rejected.
Is that not already the case?
There's some wiggle room now where, and I'm not trying to pick on the mill side, and I need to be careful about it because it's a current proposal, but so I'll look at an annexation proposal. Hypothetically, somebody wants to annex and do a phased development of the annexation area. We could approve a master plan level development, recognizing that water rights would not necessarily be secured for, say, the later phase. Say it's a 5-phase development. We have enough water for phase 1 only. We could approve the master plan for phases 1 through 5 and recognize that, as a condition, they could not proceed until they secured water. You could hypothetically change the comprehensive plan to say, we shouldn't even approve that. We should shut that down.
That makes sense to me, although that still sounds to me like a development code, that the development code is the proper place for that and not the comp plan, but I can leave that for another day. For number 2, and this is sort of goes into number 3 as well. The reason I'm skeptical of considering this is just because, while it is true that recent job growth has been in retail and service jobs, and housing growth, housing that has been built has been expensive, the city really does not control either of those things. We does not really control how much people get paid at their jobs within the city, nor does it control how much housing is sold for. So I don't know that that is a realistic goal. And I guess just on that other point, talking about growth targets and whatnot, I'm wondering if you can give a 60-second overview. My understanding is that we're pretty well built out up here on the ridge, and I'm wondering where, if at all, there is further room for significant growth, unless what's being discussed here has something to do with the urban growth boundary and something to that effect.
Sure. So you're absolutely correct that the city doesn't have direct control over, how much jobs pay, how much housing costs directly. I think, excuse me, I think where this, drink some water here. I think where this comes into play is it's partly a bigger conversation about affordable housing and trying to be realistic potentially about what kind of job growth do we actually anticipate coming, and what kind of housing do we need to accommodate the workers in those jobs, or whether we should be doing that at all. We know that there's certain development that's in the pipeline and can take reasonable guesses as to what kind of workers that development would employ, and so start thinking, what kind of housing do we need to emphasize? We have so far through Snoqualmie Ridge emphasized largely single-family homes, and of course there's some multifamily mixed in, but we may need to consider emphasizing a different kind of residential development to accommodate the jobs that are coming. So that's kind of my thinking, that I think the discussion is worth having. I don't necessarily know what the outcome is going to be at this point in time. And it may be that the Planning Commission could decide, look, this is a discussion we need to continue having as part of the major comprehensive plan update. There's no need to change anything now, but let's keep this discussion going over the next couple of years. I view that as certainly an entirely reasonable outcome here.
Yeah,
And then here, I'm pulling up, this is the King County ordinance, and sorry, I'm scrolling through to get to the, if I can find the right. This may not be the right one. I'm trying to find the updated growth targets so that you can see what we're, and this may be the wrong ordinance. There's two. Oh no, here it is. So these are the updated growth targets that were adopted by the King County Council. Snoqualmie's is this one here. So 1,500 housing units and 4,425 jobs. Where those would go potentially is within the unincorporated UGA areas and the mill site, because those are the areas that the city has within its planning jurisdiction and are not present, essentially not presently built. I would certainly not say that development of all those areas is necessarily going to happen by, as you can see, 2044. But for planning purposes, we need to assume something is going to happen. So that's why the target is set as it is.
We going back to the discussions we had in 2000 whatever 12 excuse me, you know, the big driver I think of when we were thinking of for potential employment growth was Snoqualmie Hills West and expansion of the business park. So obviously that comes with annexation and other things that have tried and failed. So in hindsight, you know, it was aspirational at the time, but we see where things have changed since then.
Yeah. You know, and I think we said before, the target existing does not guarantee any of this growth will actually happen. You know, as has been pointed out, this city's water supply is at this moment in time getting pretty limited. We don't have the water capacity to accommodate this much growth. So we would need to acquire more water to support this level of growth, or become vastly more efficient in the use of our current water supply. So that's one limiting factor. But we will need to, the next comprehensive plan will need to plan somehow to accommodate this. Unless you think that's a big number, and don't get me wrong, if the numbers are pretty big, you could easily look at any other city in this list and think, oh, their numbers were much bigger than ours. I mean, Issaquah has 3,500 homes and just shy of 8,000 jobs. You know, Redmond's looking at accommodating a huge number. So I think the overall thing to look at is the top line numbers. I mean, we're talking about 147,000 new housing unit target in Bellevue and Seattle, you know, another almost that many in the so-called core cities. There's a lot of growth coming to King County in the next 25 years, well, not just shy of 25 years. And so we're planning on how we're going to try to accommodate it is kind of the overarching message of the growth targets. So I know we're a little off track from the specific requests. I don't want to back up to this schedule there.
Okay, are there any other comments on the work schedule as presented? See no further. So can I have a motion to approve the work schedule as written?
So moved.
Motion.
Can I have a second?
I second.
Okay, so Commissioner Smith moved. No, who motioned it?
Commissioner Goodman.
It's a tie.
Okay, Commissioner Goodman and then Commissioner Tessman seconded the approval to approve the work schedule as presented by staff. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Okay. Pretty full agenda today. So agenda item number 12, follow up with previous items of planning commissioner interest. For the new members, we do a round robin. I don't know if there's anything previous. We kind of covered the snow already, but basically if there's something specific to the city that you want to bring up for the staff, this would be the time to go ahead and do that. So I'll do a round robin, and if you have nothing, you can just say nothing and we'll move on. So I'm going to go with, as I'm staring on my screen here, Commissioner Lambert, do you have any items of planner commissioner interest?
No, not tonight.
Commissioner Tessman?
None.
Commissioner Alif, did I say your name right?
Aleph. Nothing.
Aleph, got him, sorry about that. Commissioner Aleph.
Nothing, thank you.
Commissioner Smith?
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Goodman?
Nothing from me, thanks.
Commissioner Mather?
None.
Okay, and I have nothing, so I think we'll drive on. Upcoming schedule, downtown relook, February.
Yeah, so you'll notice the downtown relook was not on the agenda tonight because it was packed enough as it is. So we pushed it off, and you will see it at the next meeting in February. You'll also start seeing work on the docketed items that you just approved. And there's the possibility of at least one more design review item, but that more depends on their responsiveness to some of the questions we have than anything else. So that's the general preview of coming attractions.
Okay, now the downtown relook has been a long time in the making. There have been some progress over the last couple of years. Have the new commissioners, are they aware of the state of that downtown relook?
I don't want to answer for them necessarily, but
yeah, no,
that is one of
Commissioner
the.
Tessman. So what I'd request the staff of, since we're going to have that at the next meeting, is perhaps prepare a, as tight as you can, maybe a 15-minute, here's how we got to where we are. Now, here's what we're going to consider now. Maybe Dylan could do that. A concise of the status of it so that they can kind of pick up where we left off and start rolling around the considerations. So I'm requesting, Dylan, can we do that?
Absolutely. I think that's great idea.
Okay. And then if there's something we can send out before the next meeting that kind of whets their appetite before that, that would also be useful.
You must really appreciate my writing skills.
Well, I just think it would be helpful when we get in the meeting, because there's just a lot of detail. There was a lot of time already put in there. I think it'd be good if they see, here's what it is, and they'll probably have a lot of questions. And then you give a little 15-20 minute, here's the status of it and where we're trying to move forward. At that point, I think we'll be pretty constructive without spending a couple of meetings just kind of getting everybody up to speed.
Yeah, no worries. I'll work on drafting up the staff report to actually be kind of a little more readable to someone who hasn't been tracking it this whole time.
Okay. And I want to thank all the commission members for electing me as chair. I'll promise to be a little smoother than I was this time, but I certainly appreciate your forbearance. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Before we go, I just wanted to say to the new commissioners, I'm your point of contact for planning commission meetings. And so you will be getting your planning commission packets hopefully Thursday, but no later than Friday prior to the meeting. And I'm working on getting you city emails because we don't want you to get caught up in a public records request that goes on your personal computers. So look forward to that.
Thank you. Thank you, Glenn.
All right. Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night.
All right.